All right, good morning, everyone. It's an absolute honor to be here for the 7th time. I'm so happy on a personal note that Jackie is moderating this session. She's very close to my heart. Very happy to, see you this time. Thank you, Lance, wherever you are. And Tom, it's an absolute honor to be here. It's one of my favorite conferences and symposiums. And this year, shout out to all the artists, Gina and 404. You guys were absolutely brilliant. And it's giving me a little bit of nervousness because you all took this a notch up. Now, I think my time should start now. This was just the prelude. Yeah? Thank you. All right. So I'm Sthiti Pragya Dash, and I'm from Mumbai. And the title of my presentation this year is Decoding Language, the Art of Meaning and Interpretation. I believe any meaningful conversation about decoding language cannot be complemented by its own, without its own shadow side. This year, I'm trying to use a bouquet of narratives from Indology with which I choose to curate to understand the meaning of language. Language is not just a means of communication. It's a tool for shaping our understanding of the world. When we speak of decoding language, we're talking about more than simply translating words. It's about interpreting meaning, unraveling the layers of intention, and truly understanding the essence behind the words. But how do we do this in a world that has currently lost its way in the maze of human having and human doing? One of my favorite quotes of Korzybski regarding this is any proposition containing the word is creates a linguistic structural confusion which will eventually give birth to serious fallacies. In today's fast-paced existence, many of us have strayed from our intrinsic being and become trapped in cycles of productivity and materialism. We've become so absorbed in doing the doing that we forget to engage in what we truly are. What is our essence? What is our humanity? Wholehearted leaders, good communicators, are excellent communicators for a reason, because they exhibit the pillars of emotional stability deeply grounded in their spiritual core. They don't just lead with their minds, but their hearts, engaging with the world through the lens of compassion. Their strength comes from the balance, and it is through this balance that they inspire, uplift, create a lasting impact, to the people, to the world around. They understand that true communication is not just about making decisions and just about dictating them or just speaking. It's about being present, connected, and driven by a purpose that transcends personal gain. Consider the self-actualizer in Maslow's hierarchy with its 19 qualities, or the divine qualities from the Bhagavad Gita, especially chapter 16. Karen Horney's concept of undivided person, or Buddha's wisdom in Cantos 26 of the Dhammapada, where he says, "Him alone I call a Brahmana." Each of these points out to an integrated individual, a person who balances their existence in the realms of time, space, and causation. True leadership, true communication mirrors these ideals. All the level 5 leaders in the world, think of Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, or Abraham Lincoln. These figures almost attained a near mythic status, yet they were not unreachable. Their greatness lay in their ability to be able to communicate with an aligned thought process with action, words, and deeds. They embodied the principle of integrity that came from a deliberate harmony between the self and the world, between what they said and what they did, what we interpret and what we comprehend. In Indian philosophy, we have something called as the Vasudev Kutumbakam, which means the world is my family, and Aham Brahmasmi, which means the God consciousness, I am Brahma, the universe is within me. And the other three, Mahavakyas and four Purusharthas. I'll explain this in a moment. The four Purusharthas, Dharma, Arth, Kam, and Moksha. The former offers the grand narrative of the universe being one family and the individual being a part of it, while the latter locates the universe within the individual. It's an oxymoron in this sentence. At times, we're unable to make a choice between these two positions, and the tension has led us to give the power of trust, belief, and decision-making outside our locus of control. People trust parallel systems and abide by their external judgments because we are not very confident of who we are as individual communicators. The Mahavakyas and the Purusharthas are a lived reality in India. The Purusharthas are derived from the ancient Indian scripture, the Rig Veda. Dharma means righteousness, duty, or moral values. Arth means prosperity, wealth, or economic values. Kama means pleasure, love, or psychological values. Moksha means liberation, spiritual values, or self-realization. The Mahavakyas are considered to be the essence of the Upanishads and are intended to guide people in their spiritual path, in their way of living. The word Mahavakya means great sayings or great aphorisms. There are four Mahavakyas that reveal the true nature of the Atma, which is the individual, and the Brahma, that's the universe. Tattvam Asi, which means you are that. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahma. Prajnam Brahma, which means intelligence is Brahma. I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahma. It is a constant exploration and engagement with life. They are the measure of one's success in life. In India, everyday narrative, one is constantly trying to locate the universe within oneself. This is true regardless of what religion is being followed. This is, in fact, one of the main reasons why the religions of the world changed when they came to India. It is easy for an individual Indian to locate any of the many religions within oneself because syncretism is a part of ideology and living in India. It is not restricted to a mere reconciliation of different beliefs, but an active exploration and practice of these beliefs that one encounters in a lifetime. It is a device that acknowledges that the entire universe is located within the individual. We communicate in the entirety with the God consciousness. Religion is thus a device. Similarly, body is a device. The mind, the intellect, too, are mere devices to interrogate and engage with one's universe. The family and the community, too, are institutional devices that are meant to provide social, political, and economic support to the individual so that we as individuals are able to garner the wealth that is materialistically necessary to engage with our current 3D world and eventually the universe. This interrogation of the engagement with one's universe is a dominant theme in the Indian cultural grand narrative. It is the purpose of life. It is reflected in the Mahavakyas and the Purusharthas. Kaushupsky, in his work, Manhood of Humanity, the Science and Art of Human Engineering, said, law was always made by the few, and in general, for the purpose of preserving the existing order or for the establishment of the older and the punishment of the offenders against it. Now, what is happening in the world, and especially in India, is that it is something truly and distinctly Indian. After centuries, Indians are once again aware of their place, not just of their place within the country, but in the world. They are reclaiming their narrative, guided by ancient philosophy that locates the universe within oneself, within the individual. It is in this context that the increasing access to media technologies is bringing about a rapid change. The Mahavakyas and the Purusharthas are losing ground in the dominant narrative and being replaced by the goals that are located in compartmentalized and fragmented smaller narratives, which are intensely private and personal, as an opposite to the grand overarching philosophy. What we are witnessing today are the moments that have increasingly become more significant than the overall life. We live in moments. We don't live in an entire expanse of the living of the life in the entirety of it. The universe itself has shrunk to one's own consciousness of the reality at a given point of time. The method is not to let go. The method is actually to hold on. What is difficult is seen to be irrelevant, unnecessary, and barriers used to discriminate and understand and analyze and comprehend terrorize, and lives are drawn down. However, what appears as a seamless space is actually redefining of earlier barriers that is changing the ethos, the pathos, the logos, leading to micro-narratives about what makes a good life. After a long time, Indians have once again become aware, and they're not just a part of India, but the world. We're global citizens. Their theater, their playing field is the entire world and the people and their lives put together. They've had a spiritual, emotional, and intellectual sense of this for centuries. But what they could not get a grip on was the modern, pragmatic, technological traversing in a sense of this. The new narrative of the family, of the smallest units of development have been redefined now. And it is in this that people's emerging micro-narrative, that Vasudev Kutumbakam, the world is my family, is our family. The four Mahavakyas and the Purusharthas are finally and comfortably sitting together. And it is causing a lot of individual and living in the collective society continuum. Everywhere we look, it is the single individual who's alert, who's empowered, and is challenging the authorities, the might of state, and the corporate, even in politics. All that is the individual has left behind the support, are a global family of similar such individuals of idea and truth. This brings me to the end of my presentation, where I conclude by saying that this is the essence of decoding language and meaning, an art that goes beyond words. It is about interpreting the deeper meaning, understanding the philosophical tensions, and recognizing the larger narrative in which we're all participants. Language is thus a device, just like religion, just like intellect, and through it, we explore ourselves and the universe around us. Thank you so much.